I change my brain? Am I just a victim to who I am? I'm your host, Steve Sisler. Stay tuned for another episode of Behavioral Insights. Welcome to the Behavioral Insights podcast. You are in for a treat today. Thanks for tuning in. I have an interview today with Ameer Rosic. He's a multiple founder, currently running a company called Block Geeks. He's an investor, a philosophy junkie, and what he calls a psychonaut. He runs a great podcast called Ameer Approved. It's a long-form conversation with guests ranging from entrepreneurs, professors, scientists, athletes, and many other global thought leaders. We're going to look at Ameer's unconventional behavioral framework. We're going to look at his motivational orientations. And we're going to be talking with a gentleman who's one of the probably 4% in the world of a behavioral style, and then see how his life and his work unfolds. It's going to be a treat, so stay tuned for Ameer Rosic. Okay, I've got my friend here, Ameer Rosic. Ameer Rosic is a serial entrepreneur, and he's got some real interesting behavioral patterns. He's unconventional, which we're going to talk a little bit about, but mainly how Ameer works his way through the world and comes up with these crazy schemes of...
That's a good way of putting it. Crazy schemes.
Yeah, crazy schemes of, finding his place in the world and making a difference. So welcome, Ameer, and I really appreciate you being on.
Thanks, Steve, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So just to kind of go over a few things before I unleash you, you've got some real interesting stuff going on in your profile. You're unconventional, which puts you only in about 16% of the population. And you have a significant strength in believing in how you want to do things. So your concepts of what you think is the right thing to do or how to approach life and things like that is really strong, which is really cool because we're going to see how that plays out for you. And you're a very high dominant, which means you kind of see the world as taking no prisoners and going for it. So I'd like to hear from you, how your journey sort of began in entrepreneurialism, what you came out of, what the first thing you did, and then I guess you sold that and you did something else and you just kept doing it. So that's where I'd like to begin.
Yeah, I'll even rewind back to kind of give the context of how I behave and think. It started in elementary school. And I barely passed elementary school. They gave me the pass. In fact, I remember because elementary school where I went was, you had like kindergarten, junior kindergarten, then went from grade 1 till grade 8. Then you went to high school, grade 9. That was the first year that didn't have grade 13, so it was grade 9 till grade 12. And I barely passed. And in grade 6, they wanted to put me on medication. It's not Prozac. I forget the medication where I was way too active. I was super hyperactive. I could not sit still in class. I could not concentrate in class. It was poison for me. I'm like, I have to be outdoors. I have to be moving. I have to be engaged. I have to be stimulated. And they wanted to give medication. And my mom, just through common sense, she's like, why the fuck does a kid need medication for? And so, they gave me the pass. I passed elementary school. And then I went to high school and I finished grade 9. And I remember specifically in the first semester of grade 9, I'm sitting in geography class and I went to Etobicoke Collegiate, one of Ontario's biggest schools. Like I think we had like 3,000 students. It's a massive, massive high school.
Mm.
And I'm like, I literally asked myself, what the fuck is the point of all this? Like, I have no idea what is this? Like, well, I have no idea what I'm gaining from this. This is absolute boredom. Like, I'm killing myself over here. And then I pretty much stopped going to class in the first
Mm.
semester of grade nine, and I just started hanging out with certain colorful individuals. And I pretty much skipped all of grade nine. And then at the end of grade nine, class year, going on to grade 10, they pretty much said, like, you're out. You never went to school. I'm like, great. See you later.
No way.
Um, yeah, yeah. So I never finished high school. That pretty much it booted me out in grade nine. And ever since that, I've been fuck, man. From the eight, I think I was like 16 at that time. So end of grade nine, I was 16. So from the age of 16 till like 21, man, it was straight rock and roll. Like the most craziest fucking. I've been there, done that, seen it, went through it. It was like chaos.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then as I aged, so 21, went through crazy life lessons, been through lots of fucking shit in my life.
Yeah.
Started getting into more or less, the entrepreneurial space, but like real entrepreneurism. Like from the age of 16 till 21, I was like hustling. Anywhere I could make money, let me put it this way, I was making money.
Right.
And so imagine being a 16-year-old kid. And I remember I was sitting in the guidance counselor before I got kicked out. I was 16, making four times more money than the president, or not the president, the principal of the school. And I asked the guidance counselor, "What's the point of school? I'm literally making quadruple cash more than any of you. Like, you have nothing to sell me."
Right. Right.
For me, it's all about freedom. It's like, I'm making money. The whole point of school is get a diploma to make money. That's literally how I was sold. I'm like, I'm bypassing all that. I make way more than I ever need right now and having a fucking blast. And that's kind of been my philosophy ever since that. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to interject here because I'm looking at your numbers here, and your greatest need in your motivational space is power. And so
Mm,
this is basically being in control and being in charge of your own life.
yes.
But that's actually looks more important here on these numbers than making money is. It's almost like making money is a result more than it's a goal when it comes to it's in other words, it looks like when you take full control and full responsibility for your life, you end up making money.
Yeah. Yeah. Like for me, my relationship with money is always a funny one. It's taken me until like recently to have a respect for it, to
Hmm.
understand it, to realize how powerful it is and how it can be used as like transmutation. It's literally alchemy and understanding leveraging of it, understanding how it works. And ever since I entered the crypto space 7 years ago, diving into economic theories, Austrian economics versus Keynesian economics, that's a whole different topic. But
Mm.
yes, you're totally right. For me, money has been a secondary. I never was chasing money. I didn't give a
Yeah.
shit about it. For me, it's like, hey, I'm in control. I make my hours. I do what I want when I want. No one's going to tell me how to live my life. As long
Mm.
as I'm happy, I'm good.
Yep, because you have a freedom seeking profile,
Hmm.
which basically is sort of live and let live. um, where you want to be able to call the shots. You don't want anybody sort of, telling you what to do. You want to be the captain of your own ship, march to the beat of your own drum. Very impatient, uh,
Yes.
embracing and really liking change. And I would think with such a high dominance that if you're not careful, you could almost like spin out of control or lose. It's like driving too fast, and then you start to lose control of
Yes.
the automobile.
Yeah, and I've had many situations in my life that echo that exactly, where I would start off at 100 kilometers an hour, but in driving the car blindfolded. And then obviously you know where that ends up. That ends up in a car accident. And that's been repeated time and time again until I became aware and conscious of my pre-programmed behavior. I'm like, okay, cool. Like looking back in hindsight, I realize the common denominators in my actions. How do I not look this as a negative, but use this as a tool, as opposed to like, okay, this is how I'm programmed. Let me use this to my benefit. But this time, instead of going blindfolded, I have a roadmap. I have a GPS.
Right. So this is called, for our listeners, this is called trial and error learning.
Hmm.
It's like you learn how to drive the car based on all your car crashes versus going to a disciplined driving school, listening to
Yes,
the instructor, doing everything he says the right way. That
yes,
kind of, that's, learning by example. And so you become your own example in a sense.
yes. But as I age and as I'm around more people who push me to think more intelligently,
Yeah.
um, I I bring up the quote that Charlie Munger said, and I'm pretty sure he got it from like some Stoic Greek, is a smart man learns from his mistakes, a wise man learns from others.
Mm. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a great quote. So anything I try to do these days, I'll spend more time on due diligence and talking with people who've been there, who've done that, and really analyzing the landscape and creating the best roadmap. But once the roadmap is created, oh, gung ho, I'm going full blast, 100 kilometers an hour, like a bazooka.
Okay, I love that. So this is something you've learned to do. It didn't come natural to you.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about the last business, the current business, where you've been in the last few years, and then what you're looking for in your future, because I see your future looks a little unclear to you, but you're driving 65 miles an hour towards it. So we call this, uh, not having clear clarity, but being committed to it nonetheless.
Correct. So for me, through trial and error, and obviously the older I get, the more experiments I have, and the more insights you have with oneself, and obviously with tests like the tests that you're doing over here, it gives you real clarity. Is I've come to a point where I understand that I'm a starter. I love challenges. I love to get into the trenches and to build and to just go to battle. I love it.
Yeah.
And I love to go deep in verticals for 4 or 5 years. I mean, submerge myself deeply with everything about it, almost an addiction. And
Mm,
then that addiction becomes boredom. And I've learned it all, at least the fundamentals, I've learned it all, and it doesn't stimulate me enough. And I've built certain things, and it comes to a point where um, we're not in the process anymore of driving 100 kilometers now. Now we're in a limousine. Now we have to kind of become more luxurious and take our time and to kind of like when it comes very bureaucratic and crazy systems and like management, then my brain's like, oh my god, here we go. I'm
yeah,
out.
it's like getting in the weeds. You're like walking through hip deep mud
Yeah,
um, in your brain when you have to. So this is what we call the difference between obtaining and maintaining. So you can obtain it, which is the starting piece. You're a
yeah,
great starter, but
yes.
we'll call it a poor finisher because you have to start perfecting, you have to start managing, you have to start, dealing with the day to day, where you're spending more time in the part of your brain that solves math problems than you are in the part of your brain that has a creative idea.
Hmm. That's pretty
And
much
it
it. Yeah.
starts to slow you down. So, how long did you last before your brain said, we can't do this anymore?
um if I look back in hindsight and I look at everything that I've done, it's usually like a 4 to 5 year window in a vertical.
Okay. Yeah.
um but it changes. Like, for example, I'm in the crypto space and I love it. I'm not going to leave it, but
Hmm.
it comes to a point where, okay, I have this great business right now. It runs pretty well. I don't have to spend too much time on it. The problem is, for example, I'm just being like transparent here. It's like the industry is very early, very nascent,
Yeah.
and so we have years and years of maturity to go. It's for me, the cognitive dissonance that I get is like, I don't have a plan of attack. It's like I have to wait, and the waiting is torture.
Hmm.
And so it's like, okay, I need to stimulate myself. I need to, like, I have no direction. Where can I go? How can I build? I just have to sit and wait. And for me, it's like, that's a problem. It doesn't matter vertical industry, the fact that I can't build anything, that I can't
Yes.
grow anything, that's not challenging me, that's where I lose board. That's where I lose it. I'm like, I'm not sitting, I'm bored. I'm all interest is out the window.
Right. So tell me about the business you've built currently that you're in, like where, in the seed space, like in the beginning when you it was just germinating in your head, then you had this mode of attack that you talk about, and then you made stuff happen, and then you basically you grew to the point of where all your gifts and all your talents are no longer what you need to keep it going. Like where was it, where did you begin, and where did you end up, and how's your business working?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, what BlockGeeks is we're the world's biggest online educator in the blockchain slash Web3 space. So we work with Fortune 500 companies, we work with government agencies, we work with the majority of the blockchain slash crypto related companies, and pretty much what we do is we educate. So we create educational materials, curriculums, webinars, workshops, you name it. Um, and so that's kind of our modus operandi. And so we're at the place where it's pretty stable right now. You know, we are a pretty flat organization. We're a remote team. We're not that big. Global total team is about like 15 people. So we're a pretty small, lean team.
Hmm.
But, you know, we're in a nice gliding point. We're in a nice, I'm going to say gliding, but we're in a nice, stable, very stable right now.
Mm,
And so for me, it's like,
mm.
you know, I've had this discussion with my partners too. It's like, what's the next step? Where do we go from here? Right. We're super early in the industry. We know it's like the dot coms. We know we're like in the 96, 97 or something like that, right? It's like, where do we go from here?
Yeah,
And that's where, like, I want to say trouble happens, but that's where my own behavioral patterns kick in, where it's like,
yeah, and start working against you.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, so what I find interesting is basically once you knew what you wanted to do, it's like you got in a rocket and you just rocketed to the moon, became uh, the largest in the world in the one thing you're doing. You took it as far as you could take it, and it's almost like you outpaced the industry itself. Um, you know how if you were growing at the same pace as the industry was, it would probably be more consistent. But it's almost like you grew it and then outgrew it because they have to catch up with you now, in a sense. In other words, you went so hard and fast and mastered pretty much what you're doing in your niche spot. Um, and now you've just sat down and like, we can't drive any further because they have to build the road.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah. What are your plans? Like, have you come up with a plan? Are you just looking at what you've got now? Is I have some clients that they do what you've done. They reach a pinnacle, and then what they do is because they're starters better than their finishers, they start something up within the same
Hmm.
space, within the same business. They they don't just continue to perfect the one thing. That becomes almost like a loose end, and
Hmm.
then they just start something else and then do the same thing, and then they got two loose ends, and then they try to start something else rather than selling it as is to someone who wants to take it where your becoming bored disallows you to, or something of that sort.
I would say primarily for the industry that I'm in, I don't know if I would start something right away because I don't see a clear roadmap to profitability for any business yet. And
Yep.
I'm not in a position where I want to. There are some things I could see, but I personally don't want to raise venture capital and be under pressure. You know, planning to have a family. I care about my
Yeah.
time. I don't want to work 100 hours a week. Nor am I driven by the money, nor do I need the money. So that's
Right.
not an incentive for me. So it's a bad matchup.
Right.
Um, and so for me right now is like luckily like I have great partners, great mentorship in there. The company runs almost by itself. Um, you know, I'm just responsible for BD and the vision like that. And yeah, we can stay here and wait it out, but I'm actively doing R&D and looking at other stuff.
Right.
And pretty much I'm right now in scan mode. I'm just scanning, just looking around, scanning.
Okay. Well, that's really great. Um, uh, so now, as you're in scan mode, um, uh, again, I'm looking at your axiological, summary here, and as you're in scan mode, um, you have a very strong stick-to-itiveness.
Mm.
Um, you're extremely persistent. um, you propel yourself forward even if you don't have a clear sense of direction. So are you looking outside of crypto?
Yeah, listen, I'm never gonna be in one industry for the rest of my life. Like before this, I had a fucking underwear company in China. You know,
Oh
so
my God. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. Dude, that's so classic. Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. I love the crypto space. Like, I'm definitely going to be involved in it. I just don't know exactly what full capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I'm always looking. Like, what catches a lot of my interest lately is agriculture, like biodynamic farming, polyphase farming.
Mm-hmm.
Researching that, R&Ding that. So for me, it's just I'm actually taking I want to say advice, but learning from my past mistakes. Like knowing the younger me, maybe when I was in like the late 20s, I would have jumped into something
Right.
already for sure. So right now I'm fighting urge, and it's actually healthy for me,
Yep.
and I'm just collecting data. I'm just going to keep on collecting data. I won't try to repeat the same mistakes as before. I'm not going to be driving a car 100 kilometers an hour with a blindfold on. And I'm just going to sit back and just keep on collecting data. At least with the collection, the scanning, and collecting the data, it's stimulating my
Mm-hmm.
senses. It's like I'm diving into different industries. I'm talking to different people. I'm doing R&D. I'm learning about it, and that's enough as a temporary stimulation for me until I figure out the next thing that I want to do.
Right. Okay, so I want to share, if you don't mind, like some potential uh, hazards to look out for based upon your
Sure,
super strong future direction. Um,
sure.
so a lot of times your brain type believes there's only two alternatives, the right way
Mhm,
and the wrong way. Like there's no gray.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
it's either this or it's that. So compromising and negotiating uh, can elude you maybe because you drive very fast emotionally, and you may feel like you have two choices. Um, and you can also live according to an exaggerated ideal image. Uh, that can be difficult to live up to. In other words, people like yourself, part of their success comes from holding themselves to unreasonable standards.
Oh,
Um,
this is true.
like you don't like letting yourself down, and you feel like if you
Yeah.
stop or you slow down or you linger, that there's something wrong with it. Does that ring true?
Yes. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like that's
And so
100
I'm,
fucking
I'm going
percent.
to tell you
100%,
where
man.
this is likely coming from. um,
Mm,
you likely see yourself, so we're going to call it your self-image, as
mhm.
better in the future than it is currently. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that we're motivated by becoming a better sense of ourselves. Human beings are always trying to be the best they can be. And believe it or not, even people that we might look at and think, oh, they don't care about life, they're lazy. It's not
Mhm.
that. It's that they've given up because they don't think they can be it or they're not it.
Mm.
Um, but anyone who has a decent sense of self, who has a somewhat of a clear image of their capacity to be a great person or whatever, if your brain is over focused on everything you're not doing, but under focused on everything you have done, then what you've done is never good enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's always out ahead of you. Um,
It's weird, man. I've always been like that. I mean, no matter what I accomplish, I'm like, meh, whatever, on to the next.
yeah. So even while you're accomplishing something really nice or profitable or that's sustaining more than yourself, and it's 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 doing something good in the earth, your brain's going to fantasize about the future and miss what's happening like right now. Like all the pluses are like, yeah, 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 but if we could get to here, then it's going to be better. And so if you create a storybook idea about your future that oftentimes is very difficult to get it to materialize, simply because it's exaggerated. Um, and I think sometimes the people that stop and rethink what's happening, in other words, they look at themselves, they look at themselves hard, and they look at what have I accomplished, and maybe connecting with people that are benefiting from what you've accomplished. With that can be your family, it could be partners, all these types of things, and then get a real strong sense that how good that is and how what that feels like. Then sometimes that can help you slow the vehicle down to where there's a lot you could probably be enjoying about what you've done
Mhm.
because you've done so many things, but because you're locked into a time that hasn't materialized yet, you end up in this space that I like to call emotional limbo, where it's almost like you don't know what you've done and you don't know what you're going to do. So, what do I do? Because to focus on the past feels fruitless. To focus on the future feels more productive, right? Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I've always been that way. And like I said, as I age, I do evolve. And you mentioned something
Hmm.
interesting about filling the void. I've always speculated. I wouldn't speculate, but
Yeah.
hypothesize where like that void is there for a reason. Like, what trauma have I been through, or maybe born with, or experienced that this void originated? And there's a reason for me trying to fill this void, to fill in some type of like trauma that's innately in me, or part of me, or is me.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly a better human doing than you are at being a human being.
Mm.
Being is boring.
Being is boring. That's right. That's right.
And so what happens is you feel a greater sense of accomplishment and a greater sense of self-worth when you've conquered something. It's like climbing. Now, I've watched every documentary there probably is on climbing Mount
Okay.
Everest. Now, I know I would not be able to climb Mount Everest probably, nor will I spend 60,000 to go do it. But um, I watch it,
Shit,
and
I'm
what
in the
I
wrong business.
yeah,
$60,000 they charge. I need to get in the
yeah.
fucking mountain game business. Fuck.
Yeah, so there's a show on Amazon right now on, I forget the name of it. I don't pay attention to that, but I've watched all episodes multiple times, and they're climbing Mount Everest, and it's fascinating to watch the personality types going up this mountain. Um,
Mm.
you've you've got this guy doing it with a prosthetic leg. He gets to the top.
Wow.
It's unbelievable, right? People die. And there are some that, they sit down and weep because they couldn't do it without oxygen. Like
Ah,
climbing it with oxygen's not good enough. They got
yeah,
to climb it without oxygen and be in a group of only 100 people in the world,
yeah,
or they feel like a failure. But it's fascinating. And your type is like, I just climbed Mount Everest. Now there's no more mountains bigger than that. So what do? I got to climb it without oxygen now.
yeah.
Rather than saying, "Oh my God, I climbed Everest, I hit the summit," and then basking in that and enjoying it. It's almost like a letdown.
Hmm. It is like fuck, man.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so, I don't know if, I mean, that could be coming from anything. I mean, we're finding out now, not me personally, but, neuroscience, and studying people's brain patterns and the study of identical twins, that 40 to 47% of the way you are is in your genes.
Oh, totally.
Um, uh, and so like there are some people out there that'll do a brain scan on you and tell you your political
Mm.
affiliation, just looking at your
Hmm.
brain. Um, and so some of your supersonic drive, I mean, you're talking about you were bored in grade school.
Yeah.
So that's unusual. So there wasn't a lot of events likely that could have happened at that point, up to that point in your life, to cause that. It's almost like that was a cardinal trait,
Yeah.
which is the traits you're kind of born with. Um, so you probably could have wore leather diapers and brown bagged it in kindergarten.
Yeah. I don't care. Like for me, I don't. I have a weird mind. For me, I don't care what people think of me. I don't care if it looks goofy. I don't give a flying fuck
Mm,
whatsoever.
yep. Yeah. That's super interdirected. Super interdirected. Um, uh, and being interdirected means that you know you don't rely on exterior circumstances to make decisions.
No, that's why I have a disdain for motivation. When I
Mm,
like, no offense, I'm pretty sure Tony Robbins, all those guys help a bunch of people. And people always ask me
sure.
what do you think about Tony Robbins. I'm like, pretty sure he's helped a shit ton of people, but I can't fucking stand it.
Yep. Well, he's helping people that need to be motivated.
Yeah.
Okay. Now remember, well, you may not know this, but based on our database, about 75% of the public is passive.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you're in the 7%. 7% are aggressive in the world, meaning they see the world, they know what they want, and they go take it
Mm-hmm.
without help, without assistance, without permission. They just, the proverbial caveman going out and killing the animal and dragging it to the cave.
Yep.
Um, that's how you function in the world. Within the 7%, there's 0 to 100. Within that 7%, you're probably 10% of the 7% because you have such high dominance and high power. Uh, so you are, how they talk about, the top 1% in financially and this kind of a thing. You're sort of that way when it comes to hacking your own path and making your own way. And if all people stay behind, I'm forging forward. So you coming or staying, that kind of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So super powerful because I'm actually sitting here, and this is for my audience, and I'm talking to somebody who's in such a small percentage of the world population, and we're getting to witness it.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Wow. Um, it's kind of like jumping off the cliff and building your wings on the way down. Um,
Yeah, pretty much it. But like you mentioned, it's there's a lot of dangers when it comes to that,
now,
and self-sabotage
yeah.
that comes with that.
Now, not everybody figures that out. Like, if you think about our current president in America,
Yeah.
he still hasn't figured out in nearly 3 years that tweeting's a little bit of a problem. Like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't hear it. He doesn't care. But, to make things a little easier on him, he should care. But it's like he can't care. Um, and so that's going to hurt him. I was talking with somebody the other day, and I'm just thinking about if the odds of him getting reelected.
Yeah.
And I said, in some respects, it's possible because some of the progressive ideas are so whacked
Yes.
that the country's not ready for that. But then again, if he keeps acting like he's four, um, intelligent people that care what people think just might not be able to do it.
Mm.
So he doesn't have um, kind of a blank check on this next election simply because his social intelligence is so poor.
Hmm.
But what I like hearing from you is every time you've talked about something that you've done that wasn't working as much for you, you've learned that somehow. And you've taken steps to ensure that you don't stay, hit a ceiling.
Yeah, like there's
Um,
tools I use. Like
that's really great, though. I want to compliment
thank
that.
you.
It's really great that you're able to do that.
And like life's interesting. Like I met my wife by accident. I was never looking for a life partner, and she's
Hmm.
like the fucking polar opposite of who I am. Like I mean, the most detail oriented, strategic, OCD, dot
Hmm.
the I's, cross the T's. I need the plan. I need to check the plan 10 times. I need to make a
Hmm.
better plan. But then here I am, a fucking Tasmanian devil hurricane.
Yeah, now that's actually common. um, uh, 60 to 70% of stable women will hook up with a destabilizing force.
Interesting.
And one of the reasons is because their brain needs to feel safe.
Mm,
And so she knew when she first met you, if anybody tried to break into her home and steal her children, this is going back to some primal instinctive
yeah.
things, you would kill them.
Yep.
So that to her, as a you know as a biological being that is wants to protect the children, be protected herself in the world from danger, you are the surest bet
Yeah.
that that would happen.
This is why kind of like irritates me when people talk about I want to say marriage, but partnerships in general. And you and I are in the same camp. I really don't believe in per se free will. I believe we're preordained in a certain way to behave in a spectrum, like a bell curve.
Hmm.
And we have millions, and this is predating even Homo sapiens. We have millions of years of evolutionary pressure, so evolutionary psychology, evolutionary biology, etc. And
Hmm.
there's a reason why certain people are attracted to other certain people. It's not,
Hmm.
as you mentioned, a classical example there. And then like all of a sudden lately people are trying to like go against millions of years of evolution. Like, oh, let's forget our DNA. And I look at them like, are you living in the fucking twilight zone?
Okay, to your point, there was a social experiment that took place. I'll have to get where this was, um, in case I'm ever asked, because I can't remember. But they had a panel of boys um, listening to women's voices count to 10.
Okay.
So you hear a female counting, one, two, into a microphone, and they recorded it. And then they, out of the several women that counted, they asked the boys to rate the voices to which ones they liked the best.
Mm-hmm.
And over 70 some odd percent picked a certain female. She was the only one ovulating.
Ah,
Think about that for just 1 second.
interesting.
Okay. They picked up on that somehow,
Mm-hmm.
through the voice.
Mm-hmm.
Just to show you, well, this, we've chatted before about these types of things, but there's so much going on behind the curtain uh, that we're not conscious of. We're only conscious witness to a few things.
Yes.
Everything else, it's, you know, as Daniel Dennett calls us, moist robots, right?
Yeah. I love that stuff. He's great.
But yeah, very powerful. So your relationship is really based upon what would likely happen, which is really interesting because when I'm profiling people and I have them on the line, they'll start to say, well, my wife or my husband, and I'll say, yeah, I know how he is. Well, how do you know? You don't have his profile. I said, I don't need it. I got yours. So I know
Exactly.
who's going to be attracted to this. And I'd say I'm right 85% of the time.
Mm.
There are some exceptions, but because I go by the rules, the odds of me being
Mm-hmm.
right are increased dramatically. And it happens so often, and it's because
Mm-hmm.
of the differences um, and how one sees those differences and is attracted to them. Like your wife is likely extremely intrigued by your limitless energy. where her energy is likely limited. Um, she likely gets in the canoe, sits down, puts on a life jacket, puts an oar in the water, and knows how long, the
And yeah,
river
and I
is.
do all the fucking paddling.
Yeah. And what you do, you get in that canoe, you don't wear a life jacket, you don't sit down, you're kind of walking around. And so what she ends up having to do, but maybe trying to resist having to do because it takes a lot of energy, is just keep the canoe from tipping over.
Yeah.
And so, but there's an attraction there simply because
Mhm.
they've never seen this before and it's intriguing. So that creates
Yeah.
that connection. And then, of course, endurance in relationships stems from the value base. So when you
Yes.
value similar things, you have endurance.
At least for me, looking back in hindsight, I can honestly say that I think if I wasn't in a relationship, I wouldn't be where I am.
Hmm.
There's a grounding element to it. There's also the fact that I'm not just solely responsible for myself. So anything that I do doesn't, if it just affected me, I wouldn't give a flying fuck.
Ah, okay. Wow, 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 wow. This is really good. So, this is an empathetic response. And so here's my life. I'm my own person, and I'm sure you're the type of partnership where we're not receiving our life from each other. We're sharing our lives with each other.
Correct.
Um, and so here's what's great about the power element, having strong potency, strong emotional power. It's called responsible. So typically, people that are strong in power take full responsibility for successes and failures. And then anyone who enters their space, they assume responsibility for them too. Um, and so, unless you're disallowed, but 75% of the world being passive, how likely is that?
Mm,
Um, and so, like, 75% of the country is allowing the government to be responsible for them in an emotional way,
hmm
right? And then everybody else is like, screw you, my taxes went up again,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? And so, what's happening here is you're seeing your sense of responsibility not only being you, but extending beyond yourself. And you're acting accordingly for the benefit of the family, not to the benefit of yourself at the expense of your family.
hmm
Um, which means, although you have almost like a potential psychotic type profile, you're the furthest thing from it simply because when you see other people that are in the boat with you, your actions are going to ensure that all of us get to where we're going and not just me.
Yeah. Well, you said something interesting about like the psychotic stuff. I always say I know what I'm very well capable of doing.
Yep.
I'm not here to sugarcoat. I know that in certain circumstances, I'm capable of horrendous
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
Nietzsche has a saying, "Be careful to cast out the devil from you, or else you're casting out the best part of you."
Hmm.
And I think people that don't understand that, you know, people who, for me, the scariest thing is somebody who doesn't recognize that each human being has a potential of darkness.
Hmm.
But once you realize that all of us have this innately in us, depending on the circumstances. I always tell my friend, like, I have a friend of mine who escaped not Argentina, but not Colombia, fuck Venezuela,
Hmm.
and he had to escape for his life.
Okay.
And I told him, like, knowing me, knowing my personality, if I was in Venezuela, I would be a straight fucking gangster.
Hmm.
I know I'm capable of
Right.
that. I know I would not just sit back and take what the government's giving me and fucking me and my family over. This has nothing to do with criminal stuff.
Right.
This has nothing to do with me being crazy. This is a fact that this is a do or die situation. I'm doing whatever I can to benefit me and my family.
Well, you're a survivor, and it's the people again. We're not. I'm not even talking about morality here. I'm talking about behavior.
Mm,
So behaviorally speaking, depending upon where your moral intuitions are on a scale, um, you know, you'll disallow or allow yourself to be yourself to the degree that it is harmful or beneficial or wherever on that scale. And so having like I've told my wife, you know, I have a Glock that actually is attached to the side of my bed. So if I
Mm.
just my hand just falls over to the side, I can just pull it close to the bed and it's in my hands right away. And it's loaded. Um,
Hmm.
and with hollow points. And uh,
God bless Texas.
this neighborhood, you know, where I'm at, you know, I'm in old Plano, which isn't the beautiful, nice,
Yeah.
newer built West Plano. It's the older version of Plano, but it's where it's the neighborhood where everybody goes because they think they can get some good items if they. I've been robbed twice.
Really?
Yeah, my garage was robbed. They stole a really nice bicycle that I had, and I've got another one in there hanging on the wall. It's like worth $3,000, and it's hanging on the wall. And there are some nights I forget to close the darn garage door. And I get
Ah.
up and I'm like, oh my God, I almost have a heart attack. And I go out there and the bike's still hanging on the wall. And I'm like, oh my God, I know it's a matter of
Yep.
time. And yet I
Hmm.
haven't done anything to solve that problem. Um,
How would Jimmy rig that with that kind of like electrical tasing device? Like they touch the bike,
yeah.
like.
But if somebody ever broke into this house, I told my wife, this is crazy to say, there's a part of me that's feeling like, oh, I get the chance to shoot him. Like
Mm.
almost like that's
Yeah.
what they're gonna get. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I would be like, yes. And it's frightening
It's
to
some.
think that.
Yeah, yeah. It's primordial ancient memories. Like when I do psychedelics, I won't lie, I have like I want to say flashbacks, but I have like emotional feelings of like I've gone through like war.
Mm,
Like whether it's a epigenetic memory within my DNA, which we've found in studies to be true with mice. I don't know if you've seen a study with uh, them breathing mice with the lemon and the zapping test.
hmm. I have not seen that.
And so yeah, it's an interesting study. So in a nutshell, they took a mouse and pretty much they spray the scent of lime, and as soon as they spray the scent of lime, they zap the mouse. And so these are like genetically modified mice, so they can hyperbreed the mice. I forget which generation it was. Maybe it was a sixth generation, a seventh generation of mice.
Hmm.
They've never experienced a shock ever. They don't know what shock is. As soon as they smelt the lime, they boogied the fuck. Like I mean, like gone.
Yes. Wow.
So so the epigenetic characteristics of their forefathers
Yes.
was passed down as a safety precaution.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I'm in the camps through epigenetics. We have innate genetic experiences that we're not aware of that our ancestors went through.
Okay, so you are a survivor profile type, and that's true, regardless of this story and these things you're telling me. You have a surviving profile. So Hippocrates, when he was people watching, he noticed that the people that lived in the highest mountainous regions were vicious warriors, and the people that lived in the
Mm,
meadow, they were your modern day today. You would call them couch potatoes, the dad bod, you know, that kind of
mm-hmm,
a thing. But the
mm-hmm,
vicious warriors, nobody could defeat them. And I
mm-hmm,
started researching a little bit into this based upon Jung and different ones, Hippocrates, um, and how they talked about brain types going back to phlegmatic and uh, 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 choleric and things like this.
mm-hmm,
And the dominant people were the mountainous people. And I started thinking about what it would be like to live at the top of a mountain. Okay, here comes a blizzard. You
mm-hmm.
didn't know it was coming. Here come violent winds. You didn't know they were coming. Oh, here comes a mountain lion
Yep.
wandering into the camp. You didn't know he was coming. So there's a lot of unforeseens. And the people that could not handle that would be weeded out over time. And the only people that would stay would be the ones that over time developed a resistance to basically unforeseen disasters. Um,
Yes.
And so when the blizzard showed up, they're thinking, oh, we thought that was going to be a bad one, where it actually killed 6
Yes.
people in it. And in their mind, it like, that was as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I think what's probably happened is for you is when you talk about your genealogy, you're like a mountain man.
Oh, most of my ancestors, both my mom, my dad, as far as back at least, God, like 8 generations, they're all mountain people actually.
Oh, they really are?
Really are, yeah. Like former Yugoslavia where they live, it's like I forget what the elevation is. It's fucking high, but it's like all mountains.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So,
It's not an easy life, man. Like,
no, it's,
people bring up the word entrepreneur. It's like everyone was an entrepreneur. Like, you had to survive for yourself. Like, you had
yes.
to have a farm. You had to provide for yourself. It was tough living, but it's also like very rewarding living. And like, if you didn't do it, well, guess what? You're fucked.
Yep. 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 You're right. I mean, having a successful business of any kind, and I mean, I have a business, but I don't see it as having a business because I couldn't just walk out right now and sell it because I sort of
Sure.
am the business. So I consider myself a practitioner that doesn't like being told what to do. Um, it's not your typical entrepreneur where I have investors or I have a board or blah, blah, blah.
hmm
I don't have any of that. It's just me in my office and my research and working and developing what I do. But the
hmm
entrepreneurial people, where they have other people working, there's other people dependent on them and on their ability to do something or not do it. Um, hard times can hit, and we're all going to die if we don't do something about this. That kind of entrepreneur, it's like climbing Everest. Um, and then being able to live there, like once you cross the death zone on Everest up by that Hillary step, you
Yes.
got 8 hours. I mean, that's
That's
downright
it.
creepy because on some of these
Yeah.
escapades up the mountain, they'll have a bunch of people climbing that aren't really experienced, and they clog up like a bottleneck, and then everybody's oxygen starts running out. And so you've
Mm,
paid, between $40,000 and $60,000 to get to the top, and you get 6 imbeciles stuck who are afraid to get up on the next step, blocking your way, and your oxygen's running
yep.
out. So if you have too little
Yep.
oxygen, you're not going to be able to make it to the top and back, and you have to turn around. And it's a
Yeah.
4-month climb. And
Yes.
so watching this is fascinating. But anyway, wow. So it just makes sense now. This is why when you start something or you get into a business, the goal is like conquering it. And then what's next?
Yeah. But like I said, as I'm aging, I'm actually viewing everything more as a video game. And
Mm-hmm.
so based on all the data points I've gathered from you and understanding myself and using tools, whether psychedelics or journaling or having a good mastermind with honest friends giving me critical, constructive feedback, and then working on myself and understanding like this is how Amir is programmed. This is it. Cool. Awesome.
Yes.
I know it. I've experienced a bunch of experiences in my life, ups and downs. I can learn from that. Now it's a video game. Let's gamify this. It's like based on my natural instinctive behavior that it's on autopilot. I don't even have to think about it. How do I approach the next things? How do I double up? How do I ante up? And so that's how I kind of view it. I've created a narrative in my mind in the last 2 3 years. It's a
Mm,
video game. I don't want to lose points. I don't want to fail. I've gone through too many times with that learn, and it's too much of a pain point, like an emotional pain point. And so
right.
and for me, it would be one thing where if I didn't have the data and I didn't learn, then it's just ignorance,
Yes.
right? So I wouldn't even be aware of it. I just keep on doing what I'm doing. But for me, it's more or less I have the data, I know what it is, and I can now create a better roadmap, a better strategy, uh, and statistically, like I'm looking at it from a statistic perspective, statistically succeed at it, then I'm going full blast and more or less reverse engineering it, where it's like I know for a fact I'm not going to be here for 10 years. I know I can take it to X. I know that I can get different business partners to augment and supplement my weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know where I can leave. So everything's kind of preordained.
Right. Right. Yeah. So this is really fascinating because, um, you have really taking the time to self reflect, to be self aware. And then you're taking that information and you're leveraging it, um,
Yeah.
rather than, oh, well. you know, I guess I keep screwing up here or there. What am I going to do about
But
it?
I'm probably the anchor for this is the fact that I am not solely responsible for myself anymore. That is the compass or the North Star within this whole equation.
Mm,
Because if I was just by myself, I don't care if I'm on the fucking street, to tell you the truth. I just don't care.
right.
That's not a pain for me. Oh, I got I can get by. I have money. I can live anywhere. I don't give a fuck, man. I can take care of myself anywhere pretty much.
Hmm.
But the fact that I have want to okay, I want to get kids, I want to have a family, I have a certain lifestyle. I am fucking responsible for other human beings. That is the anchor point in this equation.
Wow. 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 Dude, that's really great because what you've done is this is a form of personal sacrifice. Um, where it takes emotional work to step outside of the way you would do a situation and have to be cognizant of how this is going to affect these two or three people. So I
Mm,
better change this strategy. And then learning these strategies and being able to maximize your new way of doing something. It's just, I think it's great. I think it's really great. Um, so, in a nutshell, what's next for Amir?
yeah, still working on block geeks. Like I said, that's pretty
Yep.
stable, fun. We're growing. We're not growing crazy, crazy exponentially because of the crypto space, but it's pretty stable. It's fun. The team is great. People love it. And yeah, like I said, it's I'm in a interesting period of just R&D and scanning. I just don't know. Like I'm keeping myself busy with my new podcast, Amir Approved. That's kind of my creative outlet, which I love. Going deep on that, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm in research mode, man. Just like investigating, researching, and just collecting data.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it at that. And I really appreciate you coming on, Amir, and sharing your amazing, crazy life and how your personal drive is just so off the charts and how you've been able to harness the best parts of it and learn from the worst parts of it.
Mm,
And the fact that you're in a research and scan mode is amazing. But I can see that because of your strong commitment to how you believe things ought to be, uh, and then researching to find that, I could see how that could help, be good for you to do, and that you could be
mhm.
connected to doing it. But anyway, it's been really great. So thank you.
Thank you, Steven, man. I appreciate it.